Welcome to On Her Terms Defined. My name is Charlene Ketchum, and today I am with Miss Kenya Mims. She is the author of Four Marriages Before 40. This book is just like luscious, y'all. You have to read it. It is such an empowering journey. And before we dive into the chat about it, first, Kenya, I just want to thank you for making time to chat with me today. And thank you for sharing your story. As I was reading this, I really felt like I don't know if you're like a Terry McMillan fan or like who are do you like to read a lot?
I love to read. If I could show you
Who are
my book, I would show you all of my books. And some is still in storage. Like, yes, I love to read.
Oh
Love
my goodness. So like
to.
who are your favorite authors?
Geez, Terry McMillan is definitely one.
Yeah.
Zane, I think will always be like, oh,
Yeah.
my favorite.
Yes.
Always be my favorite. Let's see. I have read Sarah Jacob Roberts
Hmm.
book, and I actually quoted her a few times in my book because she helped me a lot during this process and even in just the healing process that I went through. And so I really like her writing. And now I am part of a book club with this group that I'm in, Black Girls Social Club, BGSC, and we have a Houston book club. So I'm reading different authors now.
Yeah.
So just kind of feeling my way to add a few more people to the list. Yeah, so
Awesome.
pretty
Yeah, as
general.
I was reading it, I was wondering like who is her inspiration?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Zay, I don't know. Me and Zay, I don't know if it's because of my history
Yeah.
that I meshed with her so well.
Yeah.
But I try not to go in that route. And if you read my book, it kind of tiptoe in, like a toe in the water. But I
Right.
didn't dwell in it too long. But
Right.
a few of my friends that read my book, they was like, your follow-up needs to be like that, like Zay. And I was like, I don't know if the Saints read it. I
Oh
don't
my
know if
goodness.
the Saints ready for it, but yeah, she's definitely like one of my biggest like motivators when it comes to like speaking the truth, but not being afraid to like tap into like important things or even like addictions like the book, but like not being afraid to like talk about things, and with Sarah, um she helped my voice of vulnerability, if
Hmm.
that makes sense, because her
Yeah.
book, hold on, I got it. Actually, it's on my
And I
other
love
phone.
your background, by the way. I gotta
Oh,
say that, like your photo that is like so fierce. I'm like,
yes,
you go,
thank
girl, like
you,
a
thank
model.
you. Yes, I did it. I did that in my photo shoot for when I was, releasing my book last year, and that's like
Okay.
one of my favorite pictures. So I put
Yes.
it in my background. Yes, but the Sarah Jacobs book, Jake's book was "Don't Settle for Safe," and that book helped me tremendously. And even in my journaling, I wrote about like some of the chapters, like I highlighted all the way through the book, but it helped me be more vulnerable in talking about myself, like, and in talking about my problems, and even things of overcoming. And she basically gave confirmation that it's okay, to not settle, like for the
Hmm.
safe things. Like it's okay to talk about things that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that was a really big inspiration for me writing my memoir. Yeah.
Wow. And that kind of relates. I'm jumping ahead. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, let me before I do that. So for people in the audience who are not familiar with the book, can you give them just a summary overview of what the book is about?
Yes. So the book, Four Marriages Before 40, is literally about my four marriages before I turned 40. But it gives details on how I got to marriage number one, for one. It opens up with a really big experience that I had that kind of scarred me a little bit. And it kind of tweaked my feelings on guys. And so it goes into each of my marriages in detail, but it also, you can also see the underlying issue, which was me. And I, confess to that, put it on paper. The issue was me in each marriage. And so it's not a blame book, or anything like that. I'm not bashing anybody, even my parents, which when you read the book, you will, discover that a lot of the issues that was trickling into these marriages were issues trickling from childhood. So it tells on issues regarding relationships and love and hurt, and basically some different types of like dislike and slight hatred, but how it can turn around, if you put in the work. But you first have to look at yourself. And that's basically what I had to do. So that's the general gist of the book.
Yes.
General.
Excellent. Excellent. So that was my takeaway. So yeah,
Mhm.
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. What I really appreciated about your book is, there are so many women, Black women in particular now, who are really being inspired to share their story and share their testimony. And that's so beautiful. But what I loved about your book, and you don't see that in every story, but what you did that I really appreciated is that you did that work to look inside and say, what's the common denominator? And I think you
Yeah.
actually say that.
I
Like,
said
what's
that.
the
Yeah.
common denominator? Is me.
Yeah.
And not everyone does that. You people will share all these lessons and share, this enlightenment on their journey, but they never say, you know what, I had some responsibility here, or I had a lot of responsibility here. And I love the way that you do that, because you do it with compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was so happy to see that, because I'm like, this shows me that she's still loving herself, even though
Yeah.
she's holding herself accountable, because that's so important to do and so
It
hard to do.
is. It is. And it took a while to get there. It took a while to get there. I beat myself up a lot. But it was not in the sense of like verbal, it was more so inward, like abuse
Hmm.
to myself. And so my self-esteem, like I've never had low self-esteem, but it was like wavering, like it was like doing this. And it was, I wasn't in a good place for a while, until I really fully grasped like the idea first of healing. And then once I, with, going through my sessions, realized, hey, I was like, okay, well, I can't beat myself up anymore about this, because I started to uncover why I was that way, And so instead of it beating myself up, I started trying to figure out how to fix it, you know. So it was a work in progress for me to even get to, making myself feel better about, the decisions I made. It took a while, but I got there. And I didn't get too far where it was, too, impossible to come back from. So that was one thing I was really grateful for. I was not too far gone, as everybody say. I was able to basically pick myself up from the level that I was on and not miss a beat, but just kind of
Hmm.
progress from there. So I was grateful that I didn't lose too much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, and one of the things that I noticed throughout the book is that you always had a heightened sense of self-awareness, from the very beginning,
Yeah,
when you had a very traumatic event right out, you knew how that had impacted you. And
yeah,
then when you first got married, you knew, I've got this doubt. Each time you had these inklings, you knew you were very in touch with what you were feeling.
Yeah,
And I was like,
yeah,
wow,
yeah,
but sometimes you didn't necessarily listen to that inner
exactly.
voice.
That's what I was about to say. Like it was like the self-awareness was there, but I didn't listen to it, and so
Yeah.
it caused bad, bad decisions. And I feel like a lot of things could have been avoided if I would have paid more attention, and even not pay more attention, but valued my gut feelings, valued my
Yes.
self-awareness, or the things that I was thinking. If I valued it more to take action on it, I feel like a lot of
Mhm.
things would have ended up differently too. So that's actually one of the things that I am working on presently is being more self-aware of my feelings, but verbalizing at the same time. So yeah, still working.
We are always,
Yeah.
we are always a work in progress.
Uh-huh.
There's no such a thing. I mean, it's one of the other things that stuck with me about your book is your journey with therapy. Like,
Uh-huh.
I think if people don't read it for anything else, read this book to see a real illustration of how therapy works.
Yeah.
Because you hear so often that people say, "Oh, I found this therapist and we talked and I'm healed and I'm great." And that's not how it happens for
Um,
most people.
yeah.
And in your book, you went and then you stopped going, and then you went again, and then you stopped going, and then at some point when you went, you brought in your parents, you involved your husband in it, and it was just this journey for you to be able to find the right therapist for you and find the right comfort. So if would you mind talking a little bit about your journey? Like, how did you first get into therapy, and did you, because a lot of times we as Black folks don't go because there's a stigma around it. So first, how did
Oh
you
yeah.
end up going? Because you're also very involved in the church. And a lot of times people who are raised rooted in the church, the first step for them is not therapy. So I was really surprised to see you do that. So how did you
Yeah.
get there in the first place?
Uh, it took a minute. It took a minute. I first went to therapy. Oh, what marriage was this? Maybe the
It
second
was in your
marriage.
first marriage. I'm telling you your life. It was with your first husband. You had gone to
My first
therapy.
one, I didn't do it. The first one, I didn't do it. It was number two after, and this is a
Yes.
spoiler, but after
Oh,
the second
Stewart.
one
Stewart. Yes.
passed, after he passed, I went to
Yeah.
therapy, and I was disappointed because of my parents' reaction. So in that disappointment, it mentally it broke me for a second. Spiritually, it broke me for a second, and uh, it also pissed me off. To be blunt,
Yeah.
it pissed
Yeah.
me off, and so it changed my aspect for a while. And then I got into marriage number three, and I was like, okay, something's not right here. I feel like I need to go, talk to somebody I don't know, and I went to a licensed, I believe was she my grief? I went to grief counseling at a church, didn't like it. And so I stopped. And then I went to a family therapist, psychiatrist this time, and got a little leeway on it about the marriage, but it wasn't necessarily a marriage, it was still me dealing with grief, not dealing with it right, like a lot of stuff. And so I kind of got in it, got out, kind of jump in, jump out,
Yeah.
jump rope around here. And so it wasn't until this last marriage when he was like, you need to talk to somebody because you have no emotions, like you just don't care. And I was like, yes, I do, And then I thought about it, and I was still journaling all the time. And I was like, maybe, he's right. And so that's when I talk about this as well, that I went through 2 before I got to number 3, and that was my fit. And then once I started talking to her, that's when I got a better, not only understanding, but feeling overall about counselors and therapists and the effects that they can have on you and the reason that they're here, and so that's when I got the best outcome and the more positive outlook on them. Prior to that, it wasn't so good, but it's definitely a stigma. It's definitely a stigma. And that's the one thing that made me mad initially with my parents, was because it was such a stigma, and I expected like a different response from them, because not only are you my parents, but dad, you're a preacher, come on, and
Yeah.
it's like you should know the importance of sound counsel,
Yeah.
and and the purpose of operating in faith. Faith is not the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, and you have to be active to get results. Like, you can't just pray about it and sit there and wait. You're like, no, I can pray about it, but I got to do something
Right.
too. And so you can imagine, like, I'm like, why are you saying just pray about it? Don't have a pity party. This is not pity. Like, this is real life, and
Yeah.
it really made me mad. And at that time, in the let's see, Stewart died 2009, so this is like 2010. I'm dealing with this. At that time, it wasn't such a conversation, about mental health
Right.
awareness and talking to someone, how important therapy is. And that's why I'm so happy how the world has evolved in that aspect, on shedding light on therapy is needed. Like, it might not be necessarily for you at this moment, but it's important. Like, you never know what somebody's dealing with, and it should be encouraged and not shunned. Like, it shouldn't be swept under the grass or the carpet if someone's reaching out, for help. So
Right.
yeah, I've definitely traveled in the journey of therapy and like people's opinions and things like that. And I'm definitely an advocate for it, I really am.
And I love that you advocated for yourself. I mean, just the
Mhm.
fact that you were willing to switch up. So, how did
Yeah,
you, a couple questions, how did you find your therapist to begin with? Did you just search online or did you ask other people? How did you find your therapist?
I Googled. I Googled first. The first time, I actually went through my employer, because most employees, they provide like the EAP, the assistance, employee assistance
Mhm.
program. So I went through them, and that's where I found the first two, and they, oh Lord forgive me, they were trash.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like
There's a
they
lot
were.
of
It's
trash
like
therapists
they
out. I
were
mean,
not.
there's a lot of trash folks out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like they were not listening. I'm like, you're not listening to what I'm saying, because I feel like you going in, I'm like, listening to them, I'm like, okay, I feel like you're telling me what you think instead of what you're hearing, because you're not listening to me. And
Mhm.
and so those first two that I went through with the EAP program, those are the ones that I hit and quit. Like, and then I was like,
Yeah.
okay, if I want to do this and heal for real, I have to search outside of this. And so that's when I got on Google. And so I was like,
Okay.
okay, I put in Google, what did I put in? Licensed therapist. And then so in my area, and then so I just started looking at their credentials, their history and things. And that's how I found Stacy, which is the therapist that eventually helped me with everything. But yeah, I had to go through those lemons because they were,
Mhm.
yeah, uh-uh, yeah, I had to do work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to
And
find them.
kudos to you. Yeah, a lot of people won't. That'll be enough. I've heard people say, I had a horrible therapist. I'm good on that. I'm not fooling with them people anymore. And it's
Yeah,
like, well, try some more. Like,
yeah,
it's a lot
yeah.
out there. Don't be afraid to try some more.
It's definitely a lot. You just have to put in the work. Is the thing is to not be discouraged if you do go to somebody that does not meet your need, and but you
Yeah,
also have to know what your need is when you're looking, and
that
not just
part.
settle. Yeah. And not just settle for whoever you find or whoever's free, or like you still
Yeah.
have to make sure that you're with the person that meets your need. That's the key, is to not settle, like, and don't give up if you do find somebody that doesn't fit you or fit your situation, that you're needing therapy on. Like, don't stop. Don't stop there. Keep going until you find that one. Yeah.
And what should be a realistic expectation of therapy? Because the other thing I hear a lot of complaints about is I went to my therapist and she didn't tell me what to do. I thought they were supposed to tell you what to do. So, in your experiences, what should people expect? I mean, and should they expect to go in one or two or three sessions and be cured or healed?
Uh,
So, what should they expect in terms of what their therapist will offer and how long is it going to take?
yeah. Time frame. I think time frame is optional, depending, because sometimes people just need that one deep conversation, and they have what they need. And then some people, it could be, stuff uncovered from childhood, and they're well into their 40s or 30s.
Yeah.
And so that's history you have to uncover. So you can't expect a
Mhm.
a a complete outcome in a matter of 2 months or 1 month with
Yeah.
two sessions, every other
Mhm.
week. So it's like you have to know what you're going in for, to me, to know what to expect, or not even to expect, but be prepared,
Yeah.
because even when I went, I didn't know what I was going to uncover, for one. So
Mm.
I didn't have an expectation of time.
Okay.
I didn't expect the time to be that long, but it was necessary. So I didn't go in with, a preconceived notion that I'm in this for 2 months and I'm out, whether I know what I'm going to do or not. I went into it open minded, which is another big thing. You have to go in open minded and not have a, a, like a idea or um an opinion, like, about what to expect when you don't know yet.
Right.
So it's like going into a job interview. You don't know, a lot of times you don't know how long it's going to last.
Right.
All you can do is be prepared. And with therapy, all you can do is be prepared to be open, you know. And it even took me a few sessions to be completely open, So I mean,
Yeah.
it's like it depends on how a person goes in, how much has to be uncovered, for even the surface begins to break. Like, you have to get to that initial foundation first, and then like, if you have a good therapist or counselor, I mean, it starts breaking down, and before you know it, it could be a year, has passed, but
Yeah.
it not seem like it, because maybe you go once a month, maybe you go twice a month, so it's not always consistent either, depending on how severe, the case
Right.
is. So I think it's like a case by case situation, but overall, I think every individual should go into it open minded and open hearted, with the intent to come away with something. Whether it is a yes or no answer, whether it's um, a no, I need to stay in this, or yes, I definitely need to get out. Or whether it's just for self healing, like, whatever it is, you may not always get that, but I guarantee you that you will get something out of it, to know how to proceed, with
Yeah.
your life, so
Thank you for that. A lot of
yes.
people I know that's the hesitancy because going to therapy is scary. It's
Mhm.
scary and it's not gonna be pleasant. I know there were days I left my therapist's office like I ain't fooling with her anymore.
Yeah.
It's like I'm offended, I'm hurt, I'm
Yeah.
angry.
It opens up everything. It opens up
Yes.
everything. It really does. It really does. And that's why I say you can't be closed off to it, because if you're closed off going in, it's not going to serve a purpose. Like, you might as well stay at home. It's not going to work until a person is ready to do better. Like, that's the only time therapy is going to work. And if a person isn't ready to change or even hear an unbiased opinion, that's not somebody that's not your friend, somebody that's not your yes man. If you're not willing to hear a person in that category, then stay at home. A person has to mentally be ready for it, because you will be wasting your time and the therapist's time.
Right.
So it's all about the person's mentality and how they go in. I was not prepared for the tears. I was not prepared for the homework. I was not prepared for the family forum I did with my parents. Like, I had no idea um I had no idea of what to expect. I just knew I was tired. You know, I was on number 4. I was tired of the same. I needed to figure out what was wrong with me. And so until a person gets to that point of wanting better, it's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you gave those examples, because a lot of people think they don't need a therapist because they've got their friends. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
nah, boo.
Yeah.
Sis ain't gonna give you what your therapist is gonna give you. Them
Yeah,
two different functions.
it is. It is. It is. It is for sure. I have 2 friends back home, and they they have never been yes men, and I'm so glad for that. They've always been the type of person to tell me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted, you
Right.
know. And even when you have those type of people in your corner, it still helps to talk to somebody that doesn't know you at all, because even when your friends mean to be unbiased or not on your side, or just try to talk to you from, being in the middle, it could still be kind of opinionated, but while they're still being honest and still telling you what you don't want to hear, like, oh, you get on my nerves, but you're right, you're right. But it still helps to have somebody that don't know you from Adam, and that's their profession, so they're able to pull in their education and their experience and their skills at the same
Yeah.
time, and still give you a different aspect on it in a healthy way, to go through your healing process. So even with those friends that, that tell you the truth, I still, I had both, and so I didn't feel that one took away from the other at all. So they both benefited me well.
So, with you having done all the work with therapy and everything, what inspired you to write the book?
My sister, my sister, yeah, she did. I have always written personally. So I always had journals and things like that, but I've always been a inward person where I don't really, voice a lot, especially of how I'm feeling. I always be there for the other person, but a lot of people don't really, never really knew, the things I went with and how I was feeling. So I always been inward about personal things. And so when I was going through this last marriage and going through therapy, and then when I did the family forum with my parents, and my sister and brother were there as well, I was also in grad school. And so I was talking to her, off and on about, different things. And she was like, Ken, you need to write a book. And she was just, I was like, for what? And she was like, you just been through so much and look at you. And I was like, I'm all right. And I just never being a person to like attention. Like, I'm always the one in the back with a drink in my hand,
Yeah.
like
That's
that's me.
me, the
Like, I
darkest
do not
corner
like
in the room.
And so I was like, if I write a book, that means I'm letting people in. I don't know, about that. And so she was like, I really think that the things that you've endured, and where you are right now could really help somebody. And it took months of her talking to me about it. And I was like, well, maybe. And then I was like, up on the close of 2019, I was like, okay, well, I'm in my last semester. I was like, so I have a few more papers. I was like, so I'm gonna get these papers, out the way, and I'm gonna just start writing it, see what happens. And so I started writing in my notebook. And after probably 2 months, let's see, I started that like November, December, probably like January, February of last year. I started looking for publishers, and that's when it began to get real. Yeah, but my sister, she was definitely the inspiration behind this book, and she wrote the foreword in the
Yes.
book. Where I was like, you have to do this because this is your doing. You and
Yes.
baby Jesus.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
want you to do this because this definitely would not have been done like without her motivation and seeing something in me to know that I could do that and open myself up, to have my life looked at.
Mhm.
And be like a source of inspiration or hope to somebody, that hasn't found their
Absolutely.
voice, or feel like they don't matter, or whatever the case may be, but just a source of inspiration or motivation to someone else. And so she's definitely the inspiration behind it. Yeah.
Wow. And she sounds like a proud sister. I read the forward and I was like, she is so
Yeah.
proud. She is so proud of her sister. She is so proud of
Yeah.
you. And for good, I mean, for good reason, because when I finished reading the book, part of me was just like, well, halfway through, my heart was just like, oh my God, what she's been through. But then
Yeah.
by the time I got to the end, I was just like, oh my God, I hope that young girls, especially, read this. Like, did you
Uh-huh.
read The Coldest Winter Ever?
Yes.
Okay, so
Twice.
it's like,
Twice.
yeah, girl. I gotta repurchase that because I read it a bunch of times and then I loaned it to somebody who shall go unnamed that
Mhm.
never gave me my book back.
Mm.
And and that was one of those books that we all read. And it's
Yeah.
like there's some things that you read, and even though your heart breaks
Yeah.
for that person, when you see how they come through it
Mhm.
and they persevere, it's like, you
Yeah.
know what? We're stronger than we think,
Definitely.
and our past and our pains don't define our future. And when I finished your book, that was the message there. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, she was this wounded little girl, but look at this woman.
Yeah.
And thinking about other young girls who will read it, because the unfortunate thing is we have so many young girls who have experiences like what you went through, and just even in the relationship,
Right.
dramas and heartaches, and we carry those wounds.
Uh-huh.
We might keep it moving because that's what we're trained to do. We keep it
Exactly.
moving.
But it's,
We'll look jazzy
yeah.
on the
Oh yeah.
outside,
The outside is
but
nice.
it's like on the inside, either you're really hurting or you're just detached from it
Yeah.
altogether. And there are
Yeah.
so many people who are walking around wounded, and they're so detached from their emotions because that's a trauma response.
Right.
And that's the only way that you can respond so that you don't continue to allow other people in other situations to hurt you.
That's true.
And reading your book, just like, I hope young women read this
Uh-huh.
because they will see this and know that, you know what, no matter what you've been through, no matter what you've been through that nobody knows about but you and God and whoever else was involved in that situation, you can pull through that. That was the
Right.
message that I saw
Yes.
there, because you
Yes.
never gave up on yourself.
Yeah.
You kept this sense of awareness. And what I
Uh-huh.
loved is that you knew when to step out. you
Yeah.
know, 'Cause on one hand, like, a person would say, "Oh my gosh, 4 marriages before 40?" But I'm like, I'm glad that,
Yeah.
with the exception of one, you
Uh-huh.
voluntarily left those
Uh-huh.
marriages because it wasn't working.
Right.
And that's commendable.
Yeah.
because you chose yourself, and you also did that as an act of love. I think particularly with
Yeah.
your fourth husband, I
Mhm.
was like, this is love. I'm like, I hope he knows that
Yeah.
she loved him more than maybe she knew in that moment,
Yeah.
because she needed to heal. Like when like I got like I'm a teary person. I read things and I get all, I'm that person who cries.
Yeah.
It's a situation,
Oh
but
yeah.
it moved me because I
Yeah.
realized I he that was the best way you knew to love him.
Yeah.
And you chose yourself. You chose to heal yourself so
Mhm.
that the next time you do give yourself to someone, you can be doing it healed.
Yes.
And that was beautiful.
Yes.
So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Kudos.
Thank
That
you.
was just so brave
Yes,
to
it
be able to
was
do.
definitely brave. Definitely brave. I felt like um I didn't want to like make any of the relationships horrible, and I was telling somebody, well, I told a couple of people because a lot of people always ask me like, "How did you get married?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know, And I was like, "I guess they saw what they wanted to put a ring on."
Right. I can't help it.
Yeah, and so a lot of people in that conversation, they will also ask like, "Well, how's the relationship?" And the thing about it was, I told them like I never had bad vibes with them afterwards, which was the funny thing about it is like even though I was the one to walk away, like we still kept in touch, like it was still a checkup, like how you doing, like, and I was like, despite everything, like even
Mhm.
the emotional toll, I probably gave them, by not being vulnerable enough to like fully give, of myself, they still cared. And I know that God had his hand in that, like with even though
Yes.
they did not work, but he put people in my life, like even though they were seasonal, they were
Mhm.
still like caring,
Yeah.
enough to care about, okay, I understand why you're doing this, even though it hurts. I still care about you as a person, and so that was a really big thing that I came to later appreciate, the relationship that I had with each one. And even though I let them go because neither of them wanted to end, I also put that in there that I paid for each of those divorces because I was the one walking away and nobody wanted to initiate nothing. I was like, okay, I have to let you go because I'm not right, and I don't
Yeah.
want to hold you in this, and you
Right.
not get what you need as a man, and so, like you said, my mentality was I'm doing this out of love, whether I prematurely did it or not. My intent
Mhm.
was always in love, not out of malice,
Yes.
and so I think that also helped in the situation that I wasn't a nasty person about it, and my intention was really genuine. I didn't know what was wrong, like with me emotionally, like I could not figure it out, and thankfully I know now, but even when I discussed doing the book, like with each of them, they were like, okay, that's it. I was like, man, Jesus really put some solid people like in my path,
Yeah.
and despite the ups and downs, the anger with the few, but it was like ultimately like they were literally the person that I needed, in those seasons of my life. So I always, be grateful for those experiences and not have a negative, aspect or feeling, in the aftermath about it because it served a purpose. It got me here, so it was they were all different experiences that were unique in their own way.
Yeah.
Unique in their own way for sure. But no
That's
ill feelings at all. And that's the good thing. Like it's definitely no ill feelings. I'm glad I never had one of those, type of divorces where, they got ugly and,
yeah.
all this court stuff. And yeah, I'm glad it never resulted to any of that. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a testament that you were able to go to them about the book. And I wondered about that because you were very open and candid in your
Uh-huh.
story. And I know that that's something that writers often struggle with
Uh-huh.
when they're doing a memoir or telling any parts of their life. So how did you decide what to put in and what you wouldn't? And did you talk to everyone who was mentioned in the book and say, okay, this is what I'm writing, and these are the scenes I'm including you in?
So I talked to everybody. I literally called each of the three, and told them what I was doing. And I said, if you want to read your chapter, I will send it to you so you can read it and tell me what you think. And I sent it to each one of them. And I also said that I wouldn't use, your entire real name. I will use what I called you, so I'm not literally putting your government name,
Right.
in here, but this is your name that I was calling you during those times. And so it's still real, it's still, the personal aspect of each one. But yeah, I was honest and upfront. Like I've always
Yeah.
been really with all of them. Like I've always been a open, transparent person. Which is still mind-boggling to me. Like even in courting, I've always been like transparent with where I was, but still underneath, like I had emotional, vulnerable issues. So I was transparent only with what I knew,
Right.
and so couldn't help that. But I never
Yes.
said any lie, like.
Right.
But I literally, I called them, I asked them, do you mind? I'm doing this, and I'm going to talk about, our marriage. And I did not talk in depth, month by month, year by year, but you
Right.
generally got the gist, of
Right.
each union, that I had with each person. Some more, had more in-depth situations. I didn't touch too much on them all the way.
Mhm.
But I kind of just, dabbled a little bit, but they all knew, I was coming out with the memoir. They all knew that I would be talking about their particular marriage. And they all said, okay.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
In writing the book and revisiting your life, what was the hardest part of your life to revisit or the hardest thing to write about?
ooh, man, I would probably say off the top like four things. And each time I had to stop. And the first one was definitely the intro.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was that 12th grade kid again.
Yeah.
Um, and the second one was when I talked about my grandma Peaches, which passed away unexpectedly, and that hurt big time. And I was writing about her, and I started crying, and I just closed the notebook, and I just went and laid on the bed, and I was like, oh, I had to like literally breathe. And so I regrouped and came back to it the next day. And then when I got into the chapter about Stewart, that was probably the
Yeah.
longest period of time it took, writing about him and then coming behind it with dealing with him leaving me. Um, that was, I don't even remember the amount of days, like, but I had to open, close, open, close, open, close, because it was stirring up so much. And I've definitely healed from it, but it just brought up everything all over again. So I mean, I was basically reliving it. And then, so that's two right there. And then the last one was talking about infertility, which I really didn't include in the first draft. I I went back.
Wow.
Yeah, it was not included in my first draft. And I went back, and I don't know what made me do it. To be honest, I have no idea. And I don't know if it was in my comeback chapter, and I started thinking about, I don't know if I had finished the chapter or if I was just going back reading everything. And I was like, I need to tap into this because it was a issue in each one, well, with the exception of the first one, but it was an issue in 2 through 4 that I was internalizing. And so there was some built up anger and
Yeah.
frustration with that as well because of my love for kids. And so I was like, okay, I'm really about to let people in my life
Yes.
because I
Yes.
know a lot of people close, especially close to me, know that I love children and I don't have them, and they know how much I wanted them. And so it was never something I verbally talked about a lot because I would always cry. And so I was like, okay, I'm really letting people in my life right now and being transparent. And I was like, I really hope that this can help somebody. And so I went back. I went back and put it in a book. Yeah. So those are like the 4 toughest chapters. Yeah. Four
Yeah.
toughest ones. Yeah.
You were absolutely brave in doing that. And you touched on so many topics that impact so many women
Yeah.
and so many things that we don't talk, that we're conditioned not to talk about. You know,
Right.
it's just I mean, just about everything in there.
Yeah.
We're conditioned not to talk about those things. And hopefully women will read your book and it will be that conversation starter, and they can use that as a bridge to say to somebody, I'm experiencing this,
Yeah.
or, this, I want to start healing with this. So
Uh-huh.
thank you for going into that
Yeah.
space, because even when you've gone through the process of therapy and healing, revisiting some of those things, it's still like you're reliving it all over again.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a process for sure. Definitely for sure. And I got through it, which was I'm glad I did, and I knew I would,
Yes.
but I didn't realize the toll, that it would take on talking about those things again, and actually like talking about it in depth, and then
Yeah.
when I was going through the editing and proofreading portion
Mhm.
of publishing, and they were, highlighting areas that I kind of glazed over, and I was like, so
Yeah.
they want you to dig deep. And I was like, oh, I don't
Yeah.
want to dig deep.
It's like, I'm glad I can stay surface on purpose.
And some of them I did stay surface on because I was like, it's too graphic, because if I
Yeah.
really dealt with it, it would have been graphic. And so I was like, I'm gonna stay surface on this one. And this one I can definitely talk more about. But they going through that process definitely pulled out more like emotions, and I'm glad that they did push that button for me to expound more, because I wanted to be as clear like and as thorough about certain things as I could. So that's a good thing, like about editing and proofreading, like when you have those experts pulling that out of you, like
Yeah.
it definitely, and it made me go back like into my journals, into my calendars, and I'm like, okay, I need to pull more. And I'm like, well, let me go back and read more, And so when I
Mhm.
read more, it triggered more memory. And so it helped. So I definitely expounded more like in the proofing and the editing phase than I initially did, thinking I was being
Yeah.
transparent enough or giving enough details, but they're like, nah, what does
Yeah.
this mean? Like, how did you feel, when you did? And that I think really helped, the book, or tell more, of my emotions by telling and talking more about the emotions I was feeling, during
Yeah.
certain periods. So yeah, it really helped.
Yes.
Mhm.
And you had a lot of pain in your life, but you also had a lot of love. I mean, you had four marriages, but you had four marriages with men who loved you. And
Uh-huh.
so when you look back at your life as you were writing the book, what were some of the things that you're proud of? Like, what has made you proud during this process?
During the process of writing the book,
Or
or
just, well, both the process of writing the book and then just things from your life as you started revisiting things. What made you proud? So two things, writing the book and just like your life up to this point in general.
okay. So in writing the book, what made me proud is the fact that I did it.
Yes.
Because if that was not a test of vulnerability, like I
Yes.
don't know what is. And
Yes.
I told my therapist, what I did, and she was like, "What?" She was like, "You." I was like, "Yeah," and she was like, "Should I read it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, I talk about you in there. I don't say their name, but I talk about you. But just being vulnerability was my problem, and so to me, that was like my biggest test. And I passed it, and I
Yes.
never in a million years, as much as I've always loved to write, thought that I would be an author, whether this is my only book or whether this is the first of many, which is what my sister say, first of many. So
Yeah.
I never
We
imagined.
claiming that. Yeah.
Yes, claiming it for sure. So I never imagined that being a part of my name, actually being an author. And so for sure, just being an author and being as transparent, but not only being an author, but it being a memoir. So to me, that's like the biggest thing in
Yeah.
this book for the as far as writing a book, like that's the thing, writing the book, like,
Mhm.
and the type of book
Yes.
that it is, like memoirs, that's the truth, like, so
Yeah.
it's not a fantasy book or a fiction book, like that is my life, and so that was a growth in itself, um telling my history and my story for the benefit of others, um
Yeah.
so in my life, that's definitely one of my accomplishments as well, along with my two nephews who I love to death. And I treat them like they're my babies. And
Yes.
my godchildren, which were my first children, my first set of kids, they just kept coming. My friends, they so fertile. Uh,
They're surrounded by bunny rabbits.
they bunny rabbits, and I'm like, oh, but yeah, it's crazy because I started. Kennedy was my first guy baby, and I cried like when her mom asked me because I was like, "You want me?" and it was just such an emotional day, and I was so blessed. And it was like after Kennedy, like they just started coming, and then my sister got pregnant, and I was like mama number two with him. I was like, I moved to my sister's house. I was like live in nanny, and so yeah, I those are like my highlights, like my god babies and my nephews. Like those are like the highlights of my life. And finishing school, and definitely becoming an author. Like those are like my biggest, to me, my biggest accomplishments and the things that I'm most proud of, in my life, aside from healing,
Yeah.
and not being afraid to let a person in that I'm intimately involved with, but not because I don't want to let them in, but I know how to let them in now,
Yeah.
and I'm actually actively um portraying that, and so it's benefiting, like despite the many trials, like in each relationship, um it's not the same mistakes anymore, so it's like
Right.
you learn better, you do better, so it's
Yes.
like I know better, so I try to be more aware of what I'm giving out, if I'm holding in, and things like that. So healing definitely is also like my biggest accomplishment. Yeah.
That's wonderful. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Me
yay,
too.
yay, girl. Yes, you have to
Yes.
celebrate you,
Mhm.
because it's what we say to ourselves matters the most.
Yes, it
And
does. Yes, it
uh,
does. Oh my
yeah,
God. Did you used to watch Being Mary Jane?
yes, yes,
So I've started putting stickies on my mirror.
I have. Yeah,
And
yeah,
I wasn't
I
doing it,
got
but when
them.
I watched her show when it first came out, I'm like, man, that's a dope idea. And that was before it came out, before I even started, healing. And I was like, so once I started, and I didn't start really doing the stickies until like late last year. And I was like, man, I need to uh motivate myself because
Yeah.
I was slipping like mentally, like 2020.
Mhm.
A lot of people were mentally slipping, like, and I'm not afraid to say, and so I was like, okay, I have to do something different. And so I started like posting like purple sticky notes on my mirror, like with different messages. And I was like, man, that
Yes.
is a good idea. Um,
Yes.
and being Mary J, like I don't have that many, but I have about 6 right now, and I would keep going because I mean, we have to motivate ourselves. We have to
Yeah.
push ourselves because, like you said, what we say and what we do to ourselves, like that matters, And
Yes.
I'm going to feed myself positivity, and healing
Mhm.
pieces and motivating pieces and inspirational pieces, because I mean, if I can't depend on anybody else, like I can want them to, ultimately to, feed those things into me. But if I'm not feeding myself
Yes.
that, what good is it
Right.
gonna do? So
Yeah. It starts with what's on our plate. How
mhm,
are we nourishing ourselves emotionally,
yeah,
mentally? All that
mhm,
matters. That's the starting part.
that's right. That's right.
Is what is the biggest, and my last question, what's the biggest takeaway that you want readers to have from your book?
Oh, the biggest takeaway I want readers to have is to not be afraid to heal. Do not think about or consider what somebody else's opinion is of you or what they feel your healing should look like. And had I done that, going back to my parents, I might not be in this place, but I didn't put my future or my destiny or my mentality in somebody else's hands. And
Right.
so it's all for the betterment of you. So I hope that whoever reads my book, whether it's a guy or girl, a man or woman, like think about
Mhm.
yourself. It's okay to be selfish with yourself, when it's
Yes.
for the betterment of you, because if you're not good for yourself, you can't be good for anybody else. So until you take care of you, you're gonna keep hurting people like
Mhm.
I did,
Right.
and things are just gonna continue cycle around. There it's gonna be a continuous cycle until you deal with the problem, and so deal with the problem, and my initial goal when I was writing the book was for young girls and women, but it was the more I got into writing, I was like, this can benefit some men,
Oh,
and then
yes.
I started thinking, I was like, yeah, this can benefit parents because it also, I also hope to convey that parents talk to their kids, because we
Yes.
didn't know a lot of stuff about our parents until I had that family farm with them in 2019. So imagine all the years before 2019,
Wow.
and you're only seeing one side of your parents, so you're not knowing their history, you're not knowing their background, you're not knowing if
Right.
they've ever been hurt or in love before they met your other parent, and so it's like parents be vulnerable too. It's not always for us, to open up as kids, but we need to know that as kids that you guys are human too, you know.
Right.
And so I hope to convey that to parents as well, like anybody reading the book that has kids, like to be more transparent with their kids, you know, so they don't learn about a lot of stuff at school or in the streets like I did, you know, or learn things the hard way had they known differently, you know, from home, you know. So it's a lot of jewels, you know, in there that I feel like a lot of people take from it if they read it like in transparency. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. I absolutely agree. Thank you. And people can purchase the book on Amazon. Is there any other place they should go to? If you could share with the audience, you have your website. What's your
Yeah,
website name?
I have my website. It is simply Kenya.me. Yes. So my book is on there, and I also have a few products. I have bookmarks there, different masks on there with different things that may have been said in my book. And I also have shot glasses on my website as well. But the books that are ordered on there, they will be signed because they come from me. So
Okay.
if you
Oh,
get it from
nice.
the website. And the
Okay.
book, like you said, the book, like you said, is on Amazon, and it's available in ebook and paperback, and it's also on Barnes and Noble's website as well.
Okay. But the autograph book is ordering on your website only.
Website.
Perfect. Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. So y'all need to order directly from
Yes.
Miss Kenya.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being vulnerable, your transparency, for your role that you're taking in helping people heal, because that's what you're doing. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. I mean, we
Thank
need so much.
you.
We need as much light as we can get in
Oh,
this
yes,
world. So
for
thank you
sure.
for being a light.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank
Charlene. I
you.
really appreciate the opportunity.
You are welcome. So
Yeah.
thank you, audience. Please go visit Miss Kenya's website, and all of the links to the website will be on the SheConfidential.com website. They will also be in the YouTube video link and all the links for the podcast app if you are listening instead of watching. But you are viewing On Her Terms Defined. I'm Charlene Ketchum. Thank you so much, and until next time.